Welcome everyone to Tadaima 2021. My name is Rob Buscher and I'm the film festival curator, and it's my esteemed privilege to welcome two very special guests this evening. We have Mr. Yuji Okumoto and Peter Shinkoda, who are going to be joining me for a conversation around Japanese, American, and Canadian masculinity and some of the challenges of working within the Hollywood system. I think a lot of the last couple of years have been tough for everyone. And as we kind of grapple with the devastation of the global pandemic and the many personal losses that we are suffering, we also see the kind of systemic racism that has plagued the Asian American and Asian Canadian communities. With the rise in anti-Asian violence and hate crimes, I think it's important that we sort of reevaluate the kinds of stereotypes and negative tropes that have been really propagated through popular culture over the last 100 some odd years, that especially Hollywood has been this center of global popular culture. And so tonight's conversation, we will be delving into different moments in each of their careers, but I think it's also about understanding that this is part of a much larger conversation and sort of the challenges that we're facing as the Japanese diasporic communities. So thank you both for joining us this evening, and I really appreciate you being here with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Rob.
So I have a sense that most people who are joining us know both of you, but can each of you do a short self-introduction? Yuji, do you want to start?
Sure. Again, I'm Yuji Okumoto. I'm an actor, producer. I grew up in LA. Started acting in 1979 and started at East West Players, which is an Asian American theater company in LA. And, it's been a long haul from there to now, but I've managed to navigate all the pitfalls of the business so far, and got out the other side. I own two restaurants up here in Seattle, Washington, and have a beautiful family. So got out of Hollywood and try to kind of start a new life here away from all the madness of the business in Hollywood.
Thanks, Yuji.
My name's Peter Shinkoda. I'm an actor. I hail originally from Montreal, Canada, but I did find myself in Los Angeles in the early 90s, and right in the first year and a half, I met Yuji, and we've been friends, and I looked up to him as a mentor, like an older brother, for this whole time, and he's very much guided me, and because of him, I've avoided many pitfalls that I otherwise would have fell victim to. But I stayed the course. I'm still here. I feel that I've had an adequate career. I'm located in Vancouver now, but I find myself straddling both cities, well, United States and Canada, usually Los Angeles and Vancouver. Things are doing okay career-wise, and I'm very optimistic about our industry, especially right now. With there's a lot of, our cause is getting a lot of traction, and although Hollywood has been promising for as long as I can remember, I actually see there's some movement that looks legitimate. They're really putting their money where their mouth is now. So I'm feeling happy about that.
Yeah, thank you both for that. And I think we are definitely seeing a lot of traction right now. And I think especially this is the eve of the premiere weekend of Shang-Chi, right? So everyone's been talking a lot about how significant this is, that we're having a major Marvel tentpole film starring an Asian American man, no less. And I think we're definitely going to touch on that a little bit later in the conversation. But I wanted to think maybe start us back from the beginning and talk a little bit about, when we think about representations of Japanese men, particularly, the first person that comes to my mind is Sesshu Hayakawa, the Issei immigrant actor that was popular in the silent era of cinema. And I mean, he was the epitome of the villain, right? And this kind of typecast where, although he was a male sex symbol and sort of commodified, especially by white female audiences, he really did a very poor job of representing Japanese men in a positive light. To the extent that, you know, Japanese Americans as well as the government of Japan actually protested a lot of his roles. And then, you know, we go from there to the anti-Japanese propaganda of World War II, and we see, you know, the angry Japanese soldier on all these propaganda posters throughout the early mid 1940s, and those images don't go away. And, you know, obviously we have folks like James Shigeta who come in during the post-war era and put a new face on what it means to be Japanese American. But at the same time, you know, we're still dealing with decades of World War II related films and folks reprising these kinds of roles. I'm just curious, you know, since both of you have been in this industry for certainly longer than I have as a programmer, but also from the actor's perspective, do you have any reflections that you'd like to share about kind of that historic perspective on how Japanese men have been portrayed and how it impacted you in sort of the early phases of your careers?
Well, I guess I'll start. So I grew up in LA in a traditional JA household. You know, as a kid, I was always trying to figure out who I was. Was I Japanese or was I American? You know, I did all the American things. You know, as a kid, you eat at McDonald's, be a Boy Scout, play Little League. You know, and yet, you know, I had this other, you know, culture that you know, my parents were pushing on with me, which is you know, you have to attend Japanese school, you know, on the weekends. And you know, I spent the better part of my summer, you know, helping my dad on his gardening routes. And you know, it was hard seeing other kids, you know, just having fun, and here I was, you know, stuck in this hell of helping out my dad. But you know, you resent that Japanese side of yourself. But as I grew older, I learned to appreciate that, embrace it. You know, so I know what kind of hardships they went through, and now, you know, being an adult, you learn to appreciate what they've sacrificed and what they've done for you. You know, so when, as a kid, you see these roles on TV and in film, and you don't think twice about it. You just, as a kid, that's what you accept. But I think as you get older, you know, and as I got involved in acting, I realized, you know, this is not right. Why are these roles going to white folks that should go to Asian Americans? And you know, you want that to change, but I think it's one of those things where it takes time. You know, for me, I got into this business because, you know, watching, you know, Bruce Lee in movies growing up as a kid, you say, that's what I want. I want to be like him, because he had the it factor. He had the charisma, he had the chops, he had the martial arts, he had everything. And so, you know, you look at him as a role model, because honestly, as a kid, there wasn't that many to really look up to at the time. So, you know, has it been better? Has it changed? Yeah, I think it's heading in the right direction. You know, as far as the whole JA thing, I think it's not just JA. I think it's Asian Americans as a whole. And I think that's why we have issues with this fractured kind of race. I mean, we have, you know, Koreans, we have Japanese, we have Chinese, we have Vietnamese, you know, and I look at us as one trying to make a difference, and that difference being visibility, being representation as far as acting. And so, you know, when you ask about the JA thing, I think it's across the board. We're all going through the same issue. And I think with the movies and shows that are coming up for Asian Americans, I think that's a big step in the right direction. You know, you think back on the movie Joy Luck Club back in what was it, the 90s, you know, we all thought as actors that was the big break. That was like, you know, this is it. And for some reason, I think we missed that boat, you know. So I think right now, I think the most important thing for the whole collective is to support, you know, Asian American projects out there. And doesn't matter what it is, you know, I think it's our, you know, our duty and obligation to kind of push those forward. And films like Shang-Chi, that's a prime example. I mean, that's our Black Panther. So we need to get behind it and support it. I saw it last night, actually, and it was really a fun film. But the thing about it is, the great thing about it is that you have this strong Asian American male lead in it, and I think that's what we should focus on and applaud.
Yeah, well stated. Peter, what are your thoughts on this? Because I know that we've also talked at length about the kind of, although our causes are intertwined, there seems to be some specific barriers still maybe around Japanese.
Yeah, I agree with Yuji. You know, collectively, we're trying to you know, advance ourselves as a race. But if we were to look at scrutinize ourselves as specific nationalities or areas or certain specific cultures, then certain things get favored and cherry picked and get concentrated on. I mean, there's Western culture, they like to obsess on certain things like, you know, ninjas and samurais and evil corporate Asians, you know. And but there's so many different the personalities and the stories to explore really over there. Not necessarily differentiated by borders, but there's just so many stories. But we always kind of obsess on those. And like specifically, let's say martial arts. You know, when you think there's going to be agents in it is a martial arts movie right away, and it shouldn't be that way. We live colorful and personal, individualistic lives, each and every one of us, wherever we may be on the globe, and I think that we can not you know, be myopic as an industry and just look at certain stories and look at the Japanese. Will appreciate this and this so much. We love the samurai so much that we'll reboot you know, a perfectly fine miniseries, James Clavell's Shogun, but we're doing it again. Mind you, I did get a chance to read the pilot, and it was really good. It was really good, and it's a different take, and it's quite adulterated R. But the thing is, why do we have to reboot that? There's so many other things that we could tell, and then also I find that if we're going to look at specific stories that Hollywood favors, I find that they do favor a lot of Chinese stories, and that's fine. There's the numbers dictate that you know, we're going to make a project that's going to see the most because we have that kind of population, the Chinese. But I find that because maybe it's a colonial thing, but a lot of the times when they do majority Chinese American movies, when they're going to do them, a lot of the time I find there's a tendency that they'll do 3 different language versions of them, or just one standard English version, like let's say Mulan or Crouching Tiger. You'll see it in English. I find a lot of these Japanese stories are always in Japanese and subtitled. You know, in our case, and in Yuji, in my case, I find that as being exposed as of Japanese heritage, I think that because of the numbers, it's in a numbers game of what's being produced and what's not being produced, a lot of times we won't have the privilege of getting to read for a lot of Chinese stories or Korean stories where the Chinese and Korean actors, our contemporaries, our friends, our pals, the ones we hang out with and trained with, they will get an opportunity, and I don't mind it, to read for a lot of these Japanese stories that are being casted for. But it's a numbers thing. And then the isolationist property of Japan, and always having been a little bit more foreign than the English-speaking colonized, Hong Kong and Shanghai. I don't know if that plays into it, but I find that there's a lot more Chinese stories than Japanese stories, and when there are Japanese stories being tackled by Hollywood, it will always be from a very they'll always be looked upon as a bit very foreign, always foreign almost, When and the irony in that is because I know, as singling Asian Americans out in the Asian population, once having been the strongest in numbers and population and a very close knit community, it was decimated and dismantled after the war, and that didn't happen to a lot of the other communities post World War II. So there was an effort to really reduce the community strength, So it's weird because our Japanese American community and in Canada, we're the most married interracially to whites out of all Asians. So if anything, we might be the most whitewashed. Yet I think in Hollywood, we're the ones that are most often still the perpetual foreigner.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting points that you're bringing up there, and I think I wanted to pull out 2 threads in particular. The first is that idea about the numbers game, right, and just the box office potentials for overseas China. I mean, when you have a 1.6 billion population, I mean, you just do the math, and it's insane. And
Sure.
And of course, we've all seen that now, where the major studios are starting to cast more overseas Chinese actors. Even to the detriment of the Chinese American community, I think, in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because, people are interested in A-list Chinese celebrities in China comparative to, say, like a second, third generation Chinese American actor or actress. And I think that's one of the challenges.
Yeah, and that whole system doesn't favor Yuji, myself, and our friends because, we're sitting there, and then these projects people get excited about, they get fast-tracked, and they go soon into development in the casting stage, and all of a sudden you've been waiting your lifetime, and then they're going for prefab, celebrities from overseas that have done 500, feature films already and got a following. So they'll opt for that instead of ever developing their own homegrown domestic Asian American or Asian Canadian talent. They'll just skip right over that and go, we'll develop all the white actors, but these Asians, we're going to go straight for the A-listers that have a following over there and overseas. And that, well, geez, I don't know how to even solve that, but it's a real disadvantage,
Yeah, I agree. So the problem is, I think it's a catch-22 for Asian American actors.
Very much.
Right? The studios want to cast Asian American. They don't want to cast Asian American actors in lead roles because they don't have the box office cachet. But if you don't cast them in these lead roles, and you never do, then they'll never get the opportunity to achieve any box office success. So it's a catch-22, and it's really difficult. But the one thing I've learned in this business is that the cavalry ain't coming, and it's a difficult time for Asian Americans. in film. And I say Asian Americans because we have to have the responsibility put on ourselves to kind of create these roles and showcase ourselves. It's one of those things where you gotta do it yourself, and that's with this film that we did, The Paper Tigers. I mean, it was totally DIY. We had to bust our ass to try and get funding for this film, and even at that, people wanted to give us money, but then they wanted to change the actors to white actors. So it's one of those things, man. I hear you. It sucks, but I think the only change that's going to come, the only way to change the outcome of this story is to kind of do it yourself, create these great Asian American stories, Japanese American stories, not Japanese stories, Japanese American stories. And I think, that's something that I'm trying to focus on, creating, vehicles for Asian Americans. That's my big goal, at this point in my career. You have to kind of segue into, getting into positions of power. Otherwise, we'll be spinning our wheels waiting for that phone call that's probably never going to come. So I think that's the biggest thing I've learned in being in this business for this long, is that we all have to come together and do it ourselves, and then as a collective support these films. Doesn't matter if it's Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese. I think it helps all of us, as a collective.
Yeah, I really appreciate that perspective, Yuji, and I think it's great that just using Paper Tigers as an example. I mean, when I saw that film, I couldn't remember the last time that I saw a martial arts film that was headed up by Asian American leads, that didn't fall into any tropes and was empowering for those actors and for the community that was watching it. And I mean, that's a huge deal, right? Because
I thought it was awesome. It was a great movie. And Ron Yuan, I didn't even know that stunt guy has got comedy chops. Like, you don't know until somebody gives you that opportunity. Yuji and him, what known each other decades, right? So Yuji knows him, knows he can pull it off, puts him in there. This guy's punchline after punchline after punchline. You wouldn't know it. Usually he's stunt coordinating, right? But this guy gets it, and he's just an all-American guy too, and he gets jokes. And man, his comedic timing was what. He's a comedian and a martial artist, a deadly comedian. But he wouldn't get that unless somebody like Yuji helms a project like this and gives somebody a chance and stands their ground and refuses to compromise and capitulate to these financiers' demands. You got to you got to take chances and prove yourself. When I was younger. Also, just being there, failing, or just being there and being visible for in whatever amount. Like, he's saying Bruce Lee, I'm saying Yuji Okumoto. I saw all those movies before I went there. Bruce Lee was a little bit, it's like I was a kid. I'm watching all the VCR, but I'm watching this guy in Aloha Summer and the Karate Kid. I'm seeing him in everything. What's that other one? You did some Cusack movie too.
Oh, Better on Bed.
Yeah. So I'm going. I want to be that guy. And the thing was, if he wasn't there, I wouldn't have made that trip. I wouldn't have went to this acting class where I met him. They said, there's an actor you might know, Yuji Okumoto. He's in the class too, and there has to be that. There has to be that leadership quality. There has to be somebody there. It's inspirational. I'm admitting it was Yuji. It was Yuji. J. Scott Lee came after Yuji. Yuji was there, and that's what, who's the other fellow from the Revenge of the Nerds? Brian Toshi. What's Toshi?
Brian Toshi, yeah. Brian Toshi.
Toshi. He said that's the other guy. I'm just like, I'm sure he's a nice guy and everything, but I got to admit, it's like I want to be there and have it be that guy's career. No, I was looking at Yuji. He was the only guy, other than Sulu. So you have to have somebody visible there, no matter what, even if they're fractionally compared to the white A-listers. but you have somebody there. It's like a beacon, a tiny light, and then you'll go to it, and you have to have that leadership, or you won't be able to conjure up any kind of confidence. So I thank Yuji for that. And that's another thing. If you stay there, you become the example for the next generation, right? And that's essentially what I was doing. I'm not gonna follow these guys, and I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna honor everything they did before me. So I think our visibility is amazing right now. That's great. There's so much inspiration out there.
Right.
People, be proactive about it. I think they are, but there's so much out there. There's so many people to look up to now, and that's an amazing thing.
I think it also speaks to the pipeline, right? And that's the point that Yuji is making there about I mean, he has the ability now to as a producer, and I know Pete, you're also getting into producing, but that idea of how you can line up this next group, this next generation, and as you're climbing the ladder yourself, use the other hand to help the guy behind you. And I think our community gets that, Japanese and Japanese diaspora. I think we get that, especially within the diaspora, because of this historical hardships that we've faced with the wartime. But I think one of the other things that I wanted to hone in here is we're talking a lot about martial arts, and I think both the good and the bad of sort of being pigeonholed as we're talking about the Bruce Lees, we're talking about Shang-Chi, and all of these vehicles, the star vehicles for Asian American men in particular, have been martial arts films. And thinking in context, it's there have been a lot of tropes behind that. There have been some negative implications to that. But I think it was in Jeff Adachi's Slanted Screen, Kerry Hiroyuki Tagawa said something like, "I'd rather be the bad guy than the nerd," essentially. And I think that there's a good point to that, right?
1000%. I'd rather be the bad guy that strikes fear in somebody's heart and has some kind of agenda and agency, as opposed to just some nerd for a cheap joke. That's what I feel, Although Geddy Watanabe took it to the nth degree and did an amazing job, Oscar level job of it. You know what I mean? So if you're gonna do it, you better go all the way like him, because he's great talent.
Yeah, but I think the other thing is that with films like Paper Tigers and series like Warrior, right, and I think that our community has helmed these kinds of projects where we're using that trope and that stereotype, and actually it's now a vehicle for empowerment. And it's a vehicle to reclaim that aspect of us, which is real, because
they're doing it right.
I mean, my great grandfather, right? He was an Issei judo sensei, immigrated from Hiroshima when he was a teenager. He had studied under Kano Jigoro, the founder of judo, and throughout all of his hardships in the United States, he ended up opening a judo dojo, and that was the backbone of their community in Utah in the post-war era. So the Japanese Americans, Japanese Canadians, Japanese Latino, Nikkei, these things are important to us. And I think it's great to also be able to reclaim those at this point.
I think so too. I think so. I also believe that even though the white community in Hollywood is trying hard and they're compensating for everything that we're demanding, they're trying to work hard. Sometimes they need a little guidance. I think in their overzealousness to get it right, sometimes they kind of get it wrong. Almost like in a case where we're saying we're casting an Asian American film and it's a big ensemble, and the characters may be Korean, or let's say they're all Chinese in Joy Luck Club. You saw how Tamlin got in there, Tamlin Tomita, and she played a Chinese American, and it was fine, and nobody really had a conniption over it. I think if white people are only in charge, they would not allow that. They would have to get it right. Got to get it right. Can't have. But over here, I think a lot of us Asian American filmmakers are in agreement, to pretty much thinking in concert here, that if we kind of can pull it off aesthetically, it doesn't really matter where our blood is, and we can mix it up. Like in Tokyo Drift, there's a lot of Korean American actors portraying Japanese. I don't really care. I think that's cool. And places like Hong Kong, that's how they feel. Like Takeshi Kaneshiro, like you'll be playing Taiwanese or Chinese all the time, even though he's of Japanese heritage and Taiwanese heritage. But it doesn't matter your name. They don't. You can play whatever. You know, it's like they treat over there. They'll treat casting Asians like Hollywood is casting whites. It doesn't matter if you're British, German, Swedish, whatever. You can play anything, anywhere if you're white. But for some reason in Hollywood, they're really trying to get it right here, and that's fine. I think fundamentally. But also there should be, you know, some leeway where we can play anything. I feel that, you know, that's an issue that keeps kind of just surfacing. It's a weird thing in Hollywood, but amongst the Asian community, I know we talk about it often, you know, about that crossover. Can I play a Korean and can I play Jet? Can I play a Chinese? Like they do it in Hong Kong. They should do it here, but for some reason they gotta try to avoid it to get it so right. But us Asians are like, we're not that uptight about it. Like, you know, mix it up, especially if we're all speaking generic American English, you know.
Yeah. I had a question around the role, Yuji, that you reprised recently in Cobra Kai. And, you know, Chozen was like this epitome in, you know, Karate Kid 2, this like really significant figure, right? And I think being able to see the transformation of the character and the character arc that is realized within Cobra Kai, I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about that. You know, it has a obviously very redemptive quality to it. And I'm just curious how much of that was sort of, you know, the writers coming to you with those ideas. Like, was there a dialogue around that? What kind of shaped that arc?
So the writers approached me about reprising the character, and I was really stoked about the idea of coming back to that character after 30 plus years. So they sent me the script, and I read it, and I told my agent, I'm going to pass. I don't want to do this character because it doesn't show his progression. So I don't want this character to just kind of be a afterthought. I want his story to kind of continue, and his legacy to not be tarnished. So they were kind of in shock, but they said, okay, let's have a conversation. So they all got on the phone, all three of the creators, and they were just saying, what can we do to make you jump on board and be happy with the character? And I said, you know, first of all, this character would never apologize. So the first scene of the show, they wanted me to come in and apologize to Daniel-san. And I said, that is not right. I would never apologize. I want to show the strength of this character and the dignity and the honor. And I think, you know, him bowing and being there is an apology enough. And I think, you know, he still needs to have that sense of danger. I mean, this guy, he doesn't want, I don't want this guy's nuts to get chopped off. I mean, that's not what I want to play. And I don't think that was their intention necessarily, but, you know, I said, let me write out some stuff and give you some story ideas and plot points to this character, and you run with that, and then get back to me with another script, and, you know, we can talk then. So they went back and worked on this piece, and then they came back and, you know, sent me the script, and I read it, and I said, this is awesome, because he had some redemption, but he also didn't lose that sense of danger, and you know, and I told him the big thing about this character is, like, I want some humor injected into this character, and so you know, that was another thing they kind of try to work on, and so when they at the end of the day, God bless them, because they made the attempt to make sure that I was happy, and granted, it's kind of cool to be in that situation where you are able to call the shots, because normally that's not the case. Mostly it's like, here you go, this is what you get, and but this is such a different case where at least they were willing to work with me, and try and create this character that comes from a position of strength rather than a position of weakness. So I'm grateful for them to make the changes that they did, because ultimately I would have totally passed on it, because I just wanted to preserve the integrity of this character, because I think it was such an important part of my life, and so I just wanted it to be treated, this character to be treated with deference.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I think watching those scenes with you in Cobra Kai, it felt very authentic. It seemed to me like there must have been some dialogue between you and the writers. Otherwise, I just can't imagine them getting it as right as they did. I think one of the things that also stuck out to me, the kind of subtext around the Japanese colonization of Okinawa, and that's like deep, right? It's like even the Japanese American community, I think we're still kind of coming to grips with that, and that sort of legacy of Japanese imperialism, and the fact that we've got a significant population of like UQN folks who are part of our diaspora that just get swept into that identity. So just really great to kind of see that, and know that they were open to that kind of change. And I think honestly, maybe even 5 or 10 years ago, that's not a conversation that probably could have happened comfortably, or perhaps not to the same result.
Usually I get the scripts and I go to my trailer and I cry or pick furniture.
on that note, Pete, I wonder if you could share some of your stories related to Marvel's Daredevil, and I don't know how much of it you're able to talk about, but I know that Nobu to me was like this groundbreaking moment to see an actual person of Japanese descent playing a ninja character on like a major like studio franchise on Netflix. I mean, that was phenomenal, and they did the character wrong, several times, but I think like your presence on screen was still something that kind of pulled it together and made it, I think for a lot of us, something to be excited about.
I'm really good at dying. Bring me back to kill me again and again and again. I'm really the best at it. Honestly, it was a great, I might have said some things before, but that's separate to my experience really on set. It was another normal set. Maybe it's moving fast paced. Maybe you're not getting as many, it was fast. It was an uncomfortable set. Clearly everything I was doing was, I'll just leave it. It wasn't comfortable. And we're shooting in very gritty, locations and dilapidated parts of all over the 5 boroughs of New York. But that point was fun. It was thrilling. It was very challenging. But it did visibility also helped my career. On a personal level, it was amazing because I love the character. Not that character. He didn't exist back in the 80s, but I loved that storyline with Elektra, Kirigi, and the hand and all that. And, I just went into it very familiar with what I was going to do and very much informed by Yuji. Yuji's chosen. I'm serious. There's not that many threatening Japanese guys. Bruce Lee wasn't going around threatening people with a Japanese accent ever. So, unlike, honestly, Yuji, I was thinking about Chosen and, with better fashion sense. The outfits I was wearing were a hell of a lot more than I was getting paid per episode. Each outfit that I was wearing on each episode. Every time you see me wearing an outfit, that outfit is more. You can't even believe. Going to all these designer stores all over Lower Manhattan, meeting a wardrobe, getting fitted. That was crazy. But I still love the product. I love the way that it was received, and I'm hearing crazy rumors that Charlie Cox might might make an appearance in Spider-Man Far From Home. So we'll see. I'm also very much looking forward to Shang-Chi, and I know Shang-Chi in the comics. He'd fight the hand often, So who knows what the future holds? But a lot of people are making admissions to their discrepancies and making things right. Kevin Feige recently said that he made a horrible mistake with the Chosen One, and they really, I think that we already know in a roundabout way how they're going to handle Ben Kingsley's the Mandarin, from Iron Man 3 in Shang-Chi. So, we're all in an uproar back then. What the hell? The Mandarin is not even a... Cut to almost 10 years later. Here's the resolution, you know what I mean? So everything can be fixed, but it takes time. As Yuji was saying earlier, everything takes a hell of a lot of time, So I've been feeling more optimistic in the last year than I ever have, and I've seen a lot of people getting a lot of opportunities. Randall Park's getting, Aquafina. These are really extreme talents, and they're booking, and I just love seeing it when you see these press releases. Well, I'd rather see myself in that press release, but seeing them is very encouraging. That people want to keep seeing these people in project to project. So, I'm happy.
I mean, there's a lot.
I'm happy and professionally in a long time.
And that's exciting to hear. And I think, there's a lot that's happening for the community right now. And as difficult as this time period has been with COVID and the anti-Asian racism, I do think that we're actually finally getting a bigger slice of the pie. And, we'll hope to be able to kind of parlay that into meaningful change. But in the meantime, obviously, we're going to keep kind of pushing from the DIY Asian American indie filmmaking community. I wanted to transition into some audience questions. We have about 15 minutes left. So for those of you who are following along live with us, feel free to add in some comments into the thread, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Our first question comes from Ben Silveria, and this is to Yuji. Do you think that Peter's Nobu would fit in with the awesome Asian bad guys?
Yes, of course. Of course. I don't see why not. Yes, definite.
We've got a follow-up question for Peter, also from Ben. Do you think that Nobu would respect Tony Leung's Wenwu in MCU or look at him as an ally?
Ooh, you're asking me to write a plot for a story, or speculate, or where it would go if those two organizations, the Ten Rings and the Hand, were to meet. Let me reference my omnibus over here. But I don't know. Has that happened in ink, like in the comics? I'm not sure. But of course, they'd be they're gentlemen. I'm sure they would exchange, the extreme formalities. Whether or not their intention was to kill each other, that's up for grabs. But I'm sure they'd be polite. There
Absolutely.
You go, Ben.
Good answer. We've got a question from Ken Mochizuki, who asks, is Sandra Oh the epitome of API actors now able to play non-AAPI roles?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That was an easy one.
Yes.
She's incredible, man.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, watching The Chair as someone who's like an adjunct professor, way too uncomfortably close to reality. Certainly being a member of the Asian American Studies department.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a compliment.
Yeah. We also had a follow-up question from Ken, who asked, Yuji, you were in a movie where you were an American detective after Asian gangsters. Can or are there more movies like that?
I don't see why not. That would be awesome. What was that one called? Blue Tiger.
Blue Tiger. Blue. Virginia Madsen.
Virginia Madsen, exactly.
I think the first thing I talked about was when I met you. Oh my God. You know that scene with Virginia Madsen, Yuji? You know that scene I'm talking. I literally was like all over Yuji about that.
Yeah, it's funny because there's moments in there that if you watch the film, I do this interrogation with Virginia Madsen. I'm sitting on the bed. I got shingles going on and all that stuff as the character. And then I get up to close the window, and it's almost like a comedic moment. And I kind of wanted to. I love incorporating comedy into these characters. Well, I go to shut the window, and it just jams on me. I'm like, and I just kind of play it off and move on with the scene. Well, that actually happened where the window was supposed to close, but it didn't close, and you just kind of go with it, and and they kept that take. So that was a hoot. So yes, to answer your question, I hope there'll be more films like that, because I love that character. Just absolutely love that character.
We have a question from Caroline Kimura, who asks to both of you, what would your dream roles be?
Pete?
It's nothing too exotic. I've grown up watching a lot of hospital procedurals, sitcoms, crime procedurals, mostly favoring those ones, Magnums and E-teams and Hunters and stuff like that. And I always like just watching these cool guys, gumshoes, cops, beat cop or detective, solving the week to week. And that's not even a reach. It's just like every actor has kind of done that. I've never done that. Just want to hold a coffee and be at a crime scene, and that's it. I never even got to play that, but it seems like every white actor has a few of those, played a few cops and, and flawed cops. Never got to play that. I would just love to be just a good American guy solving crimes, in some form or another. That'd be awesome. Maybe NCIS.
What about you, Yuji?
I guess a good comedy role. I just am kind of gotten to that stage in my career where I kind of want to do comedy as opposed to always playing heavies and whatnot. I kind of want to have something that my kids will watch where they don't say, "Oh, Daddy's dead again." So I kind of look for roles that are real, and kind of slice of life kind of stuff. But yeah, comedy would be my genre that I target.
Yuji's is filled with dad jokes all the
time. That's my specialty.
It sure is.
Well, as a new father, I could learn a thing or two, because mine are terrible. But we have a question from Fuji Design, who asks, "What do you guys think of the Terror Infamy? The season that they shot."
I was in that. I did a guest star on it.
I remember that.
Yeah. I know it was an offer, so is that all? Well, that's kind of cool. I really thought it was well handled. I thought Derek Neo was great, and Lee Sherman played his pal was great, and I thought it was handled pretty well. I enjoyed it, all of it, and it was a really good and sincere effort trying to capture, the Japanese experience. It was pretty authentic to me. I don't have any complaints that way. The best part about it was, and yet disappointing, I was watching with great anticipation George Takei. And I was thinking like he'd be like the patriarch, and he'd be in kind of carry the show, but it really wasn't. So he's more of like a supporting character. So I was disappointed in that. But his performance was incredible. I was like, this is no Sulu. I had never seen him stretch so far as from Sulu in Star Trek. And his Japanese accent was amazing, and his Japanese was great when he spoke it, and really pulled out a fully fleshed character that I did not recognize from the decades of knowing who this man was and having met him a few times. So I was like, wow, man, he's a powerhouse actor, George Takei. That was what I really, really enjoyed the most. I was like, wow. Yeah, it's no fluke. Like, this guy can act. So I loved it.
I was really taken with the fact that, you know, here you have the story of the incarceration within a horror story, which, you know, in some ways I wish that we could just get a TV series about the incarceration,
Sure.
that doesn't have to live within a genre, but at the same time, I mean, there was a lot of horror to that, you know, and thinking about, like, is it really the yokai or the bakemono that you're afraid of, or is it the military police?
Listen, they did MASH for like 15 years. Why can't we do the same thing inside of a internment camp?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on it, Yuji?
About the series doing a show like that, I think that's a awesome idea because there's so many stories. Because my mom was interned at Heart Mountain, Wyoming, and you know, she had some incredible stories about, you know, how it was in the camp as from her perspective, because she was a teenager at the time. And you know, she looked at it as a summer camp almost. And because she was relatively young, she basically just, you know, hung out with the kids and other kids, and just did the dances and they try to live a normal life. But yet, you know, the dichotomy being, you know, you have, you know, these guards pointing guns into the camp as opposed to outside the camp. So it was just there's a lot of incredible stories that she has. And they eventually actually went to Tule Lake because my grandpa wanted to go back to Japan because he said, after this, this is BS, because, you know, it's not right that we're stuck here, and, you know, we're Americans. And so he wanted to, you know, go back to Japan. You know, so that's just one, you know, person's story. You know, so there's so many thousands of stories that you can pull from. So I think, you know, doing a series, I mean, that's an incredible idea.
It is.
Yeah, I actually did a whole podcast series with the Heart Mountain Wyoming Foundation based on the daily life of the incarcerees. And as you say, there are literally tens of thousands of stories that we could pull from, and each one of them would be a incredibly deep, nuanced, and empowering, I think, to see on screen.
Yeah, I agree.
It's also kind of interesting. It makes me think a little bit about some of the actors who, from our community, were actually prominent in the post-war era, who were incarcerated, right? Like Jack Sue, right?
Right.
He was at
Jack
Topaz.
Sugimoto.
Uh-huh. And, you know, also James Shigeta, like I think he was at Manzanar.
Pat Morita.
Pat,
right? Pat, of course.
George.
Yep.
George, yeah, he was at Aurora, Arkansas.
Oh man,
so just thinking about, like, actually the impact that had on the trajectory of their lives, as it has all of our family members who were impacted in some way by the war. But, you know, especially I think for someone who's out in front of the camera, I mean, there's a pressure already, right, to be representing your community as usually the only person of Japanese ancestry on set. But I can't imagine what it must have been like for those guys.
Well, yeah, and also delving into the whole 442, you know, how, you know, the volunteer or you know, I don't know, that's an incredible piece too in itself. So
what, the Nono Boy stuff?
Yeah, Nono Boys and the people that went to, you know, fight against their, you know.
Yeah, I can see how it would tear everybody up on the, you know, communities. Like, some people are for it, some people are against it. Some people are let's bail out of here, fight for Japan, and I'm sure they all took off. There was no traitors here. There's not even one case of traitor, you know, traitorism in Canada, United States. But the thing was, sure, it would throw the community into turmoil, how to deal with it, and you know, and to never ever really be solved. I feel that there are residual effects, you know. Sorry, Dad, I'm going to say this, but I think that there's been psychological effects on the population. I certainly, hey man, I'll say it as a guy. I can feel it in my the next uncles and father, and I'm like, I can see the PTSD, and I can see now looking back in retrospect as a grown ass man, I could see as a delinquent child, I could see the way my dad was handling me, whether it was right or wrong. I could see how it was a direct result of some of the traumatic things that happened to him in his life. I could see it, so I forgive him. But I could see how it did something, you know, and that was the intention, was to do something to you, to compromise you so that you can't operate. And yeah, it echoes till now, for sure. It's echoing through time.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, like they had to put up with a lot of things. That's why I feel there's a lot of responsibility to carry on any efforts that they may have started, for sure. And you know, and it's an honor or privilege. I mean, like I'm seeing you, like these guys, Yuji and Steve Park, they were just a generation ahead of me, and Jason, Steve Park, and even Garrett Wong and stuff. But watching these guys all have their success through the 90s and the late 80s and 90s, you know, and then watching the pain and watching the effort they have to put forth to maintain any kind of relevance still, you know, when you can just see them hanging on and barely, like, they don't even have it in them anymore to stay in. And you're this young kid going, don't stop, keep going, man. Everybody like me, we're looking up to you. There's more. Don't ever stop, you know? So it was so important. Whatever they achieved. 1 movie, 2 movies, 8 movies, one small part. Like, I know them all, and all of them were instrumental in the encouragement to, you know, that you can achieve things. It's like they did that. Well, I should be able to pull off more, because they had a hell of a lot more obstacles and hardship before, you know? So yeah, man.
Well,
Like,
and it's
I'm
we're all
happy.
you all are part of that too, right? In the sense of, like, you've grown from the roots of these folks who lived through the incarceration, who ended up
100%.
on the screen.
They don't know everybody's name that's looking at them, but I guarantee you, there's people out there across the world looking at the screen going, wow, wow, and you're helping them. And really, it's like you just gotta stand your ground. It's not for necessarily me in my personal career. I'm like, whatever, man, you know, I'll be washed up in my mediocre anthology of work, whatever. It's the people that you affect, you know, that afterwards that will carry it on and give dignity to the community. That's the most important thing, I think. Especially now, because holy geez, like, I'm up in Canada right now, but I'm looking down. You're the apartment below, guys. And wow, a lot of things going on down in the States. Pennsylvania center stage too, where you're at.
Yeah, there is a lot happening here, but
there's a lot. Our little issue here is like one little racial issue and a big, you know, ball of crap. And I'm like, oh man, I wish you the best. I'll see you guys. I'm coming down soon. I'm just waiting for the borders to be reciprocated and let us 30 Canadians in. Once we're allowed to drive in, and then I'll head back down. And
So are you stuck up there?
no, I came up like I came up to do terror and stuff, man, the High Castle, and then kind of stayed and strung along a couple of gigs, but then I was in the middle of one, and then the COVID hit last March. So I had to continue that when it came back, whenever it came back. It came back in like November, December of last year. And the COVID just keeps continuing. I got my California ride, so, you know, I got to drive it down, but I don't want to go down when there's a, you know, fractionalized industry and, you know, and COVID. Every second person in LA has got COVID now, and protests. I saw my corner, man, that Black Lives Matter protest from last year. I saw a SWAT team beating like some lesbian girl at my Target, you know, in West Hollywood. I'm like, what is this? It's the friendliest city in all the United States, and it's like the there's like a violent riot going on. Palm trees and, really, it's La Brea and Santa Monica. I was, oh my God. Hopefully everything comes, back into order, and it seems like it is. Things are settling down, but I keep getting the emails from our unions, and the rules that are going back and forth, about the public masks, but forget about the protocol on sets. That's all over the place. We're doing this now. We're not doing this. We're doing this. We're not doing this. So until everything's a little bit more, then I'll stick around up here. You guys are welcome to come. We take refugees. Well, you're up here often. I've seen you up here. When's the last time you were here?
That's
a couple years.
Been a while.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have time for one last question from the audience. Here's another one from Ken Mochizuki, who asks, have you ever done a take to try and make your character look more human and less stereotypical, but find that it ended up on the cutting room floor?
You usually just don't get the part. I'm like, why am I talking like the only robot on this whole cast? Why do I get that dialogue? Like literally a robot with weird dialogue, words that people don't say, like Sabo. No, I never really attempted anything. I've attempted before. I never said, oh, the hell with this, screwed up, man. I'm just going for it, and then you rock something completely not what they're expecting. I've never done that. I do, however, trepidatiously ask the brass beforehand, could I do this? What if I think, because I'm thinking, what? Yeah, hold on, we'll check that. We'll send it over to the studio. We'll get back to you. I'll get back to him 24 hours. Yeah, no, that was nixed. We're not doing that. So that's about it. That's my attempt. Anything more, I'm problematic. You understand? So if I do anything else, it's like, this guy's being an asshole. He's asking something about his character. So I just mind my business. I really do try to just mind my own business, deliver the words, I hope I get a job after.
So fine.
We're always under, people are always under extra scrutiny, man. You got to understand. So, so I'm just got to watch my P's and Q's all the time. But, somebody like Yuji has bigger stature and probably had a lot bigger parts in bigger productions. He has a lot more say. So he shouldn't be the one commenting.
Well, I don't know about that, Pete. You got some juice. Come on.
My juice is stale.
Well, it's funny because it's all about risk taking. Sometimes I remember I was working a show, and the actor was not the nicest towards the crew and the co-stars, and so you just kind of not make waves, you do your thing. But then when it came to a scene that it was about me, then I wasn't about to hold back. So I'll never forget. I just went full on, just doing this business, that business. I just kind of took over the set. And the other actor who was playing opposite me, he was kind of perplexed. He said, whoa, wait a second. Let me think here. Let me think for a second. And he said, okay, let's start over again. Let's kind of get into this. And so he let me do my thing. And afterwards, he came over to me, and he had not spoken to me at all and acknowledged my existence. But after that, he came over and he said, thank you. I needed that. It was great. Oh, cool. So, it's those kind of risks that you kind of have to sometimes take to kind of put your take on stuff, because I always believe that there's no 90%, there's no 80%, there's always 100%, no matter what the role is. So, like they always say, there's no small roles. It's all the same to me. But for me, it's just everything's the same. You put the work in, no matter if it's a day player or a run of the show character. You put the work in, and so if that answers your question, it didn't end up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that anecdote. I think it gives those of us who have maybe hesitation to do something like that.
I've heard those stories before,
Yeah.
where they actually, somebody that's disagreeable on set, usually the star, will come and thank somebody for checking them. It's not uncommon. Somebody just goes, I've had it. Listen, you don't get it. And then they go back, hey, man, exactly what this person said, I need to know who that is, by the way. I got it. I think I know who it is. Could be three gentlemen. Three guys. There's three guys. It can't be a girl. It's one of three guys. Yeah. Oh, you'll tell me another time, but interesting.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
Well, guys, on that note, I think we've come to the end of our time here this evening. I just want to thank you both for sharing this conversation. I know that our audience appreciated it, and we'll certainly continue to keep rooting for whatever roles that you have, whether they're bad guys or not, right? And more often than not, let's see some nuanced roles. And I know that you're both doing those kinds of things and making those steps, and we appreciate you as a member of the younger generation of Asian American film folks. Like, we appreciate the trail blazing that you guys have done so that we can kind of come up next, and we'll continue to do it for the folks behind us. And that's just how it goes.
Real quick, sorry to interrupt, but was Ken Mochizuki, is he from Seattle? Because I know Ken, if that's Ken. Hey, Ken. Anyway, sorry.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
He is. Yeah, it's that Ken.
Oh, okay.
Ken Mochizuki. Yeah.
But thanks, for having us on. It's really important that we continue to support Asian American content, and really it takes a village, and it's we need that kind of support to continue the momentum.
And we have some now, so it's great. Gold open for Simu, my Chinese Canadian.
There you go,
buddy. Yeah, he is. He went to the same university. It's like a couple decades behind me, but this guy's talented cat, and he's got just such a beautiful, glorious career ahead of him. I can't wait to support this movie. I know you said it was good, right? Huge.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it's pretty darn good, so I'm excited about it. Right, I'm very excited to see this in the theater.
I'm going to see it tomorrow, so we can talk about it later.
We will definitely.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again, and appreciate you being a part of this. And everyone who's watching at home, we appreciate your time this evening, and hope that you'll check out some more of the programs throughout the next 3 weeks of Tadaima. Thanks again, and stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.